Tim Erickson. We apparently met in New York City, and Michael must have been having me have too much fun in New York City. So I don't remember a lot of that time, but I do remember a lot of the time when I was with Tim, when he picked me up in Chicago and we drove to Fort Wayne for Michael's wedding. And we've been fast friends ever since, and he's a wonderful, wonderful human being and a wonderful poet as well. And it's been a while since I've seen new poems from him, and I can't wait to hear his poems tonight. He is a graduate of Sarah Lawrence University, as is Michael Hansen, and his poems have appeared in the Chicago Review, Western Humanities Review, and Quarterly West, Mudfish, and others. He is now the creative writing teacher at Copper Hills High School, where I used to teach Michael. So there are lots of really great connections tonight, and that's one of the reasons I'm so thrilled to have these two guys here tonight. Welcome, Tim Erickson. If I put the water up here, it's going to wind up on the floor. My wife worked with Michael's dad. I work with Michael's mom. We both grew up here and doubtless met here, but we didn't really meet until we lived in New York City. And so it's all crazy. I have a big, huge clump of poems that I was trying to pick from, and so I just lumped them all together, and hopefully I'll have enough presence of mind to be able to choose them wisely. But the first one was a no-brainer, and it's one of the first poems that I ever wrote that I was got really interested in. And it's very short, as many of these are very short. It's called Essay. What conclusion? How to conclude hummingbird wings? One must stop them from moving to conclude the clouds are still boiling. They're all about that long, so I don't know how to go from there. But I mean, the later ones, the newer ones, the ones that I'll be reading later tonight are longer. But most of these that I'm going to be reading for a little while are from kind of a day book that I kept while my wife Camille was pregnant with what became Lars, our son. And the kind of the day that, I wasn't planning this, but the day that we found out that we were going to have a baby, I started just writing poems. And they kind of go all over the place, but they're also very short, so I've been struggling with how to exactly read them, but we'll just, I'm going to give the date, and then just the poem right after the date, I think. So the first one is September 15th of 2008, and that was right when we kind of found out, and with Camille's kind permission. September 15th. She does not glow, Raisin, she is sick and lovely. Her jaws set, you are to be accomplished. They're about that long, so just so you know, it's not a gesture. The next one is October 5th, and it's for William, my dear friend. Anchored, swinging the branch, the dense shadows broken at intervals, systole, diastole, between ebb, tide, and flow, through which the blessings of the universe rush. October 16th. Trailing from a dragonfly, a long thread of spiderweb catches only the sunlight as it passes. October 27th. Yesterday's news wraps stargazer lilies. It is as it should be. November 7th. I
love this one. All is a circle, our wobbly orbit at the park, wobbling between two trees. A tightrope walker wishes not to be a metaphor, but to accomplish a difficult task. November 13th, with help from William Carlos Williams. So there is a bunch of lines from this poem that are from Williams' poem. Okay, so I've just almost started without saying, raisin is what we called him before we knew that he was a he, and he was about the size of a raisin. So you're gonna hear raisin, you may not hear it again, but you're gonna hear it right now. So this is November 13th with help from William Carlos Williams. Unless the shell hold raisin, the kernel is not sweet. Birth is a difficult occupation. Your first utterance will be a scream, very difficult to be born, and a birth of the word labor. Violence alone cracks the net. And this is for Michael. It's November 24th of 08. It's called A Jacob's Ladder for Michael. A hole in the lid of the inversion has allowed smog to rise through, and lit high by the sun, set behind the ochres, created a vast ascending column of orange like embers from a fire I expect never again to experience. November 26th, 18 weeks. Fostered inside your mother, you have been moving. Especially when she sits, she describes it as a fluttering, a shiver. Are you cold? December 3rd. This laced network of veins, bare of flesh, once a leaf, now unnamed matter, of which we cannot speak as it, like clouds, no thing passed from one form to another, merely between horizons. So they just kind of came, and I tried not to connect them too much. I wouldn't read the ones previous. I was just writing these things for him as they kind of inhabited in my mind. And December 10th, you have mastered our imaginations, raisin inhabiting his ghost world. You are for a time amphibian, breathing amnion, chewing it, pushing the walls of your housing. You ossify. Your skin thickens, you turn and stretch, you are evidenced, you cast a shadow of sound. Looking. This is the New Year's poem, January 1st. What parabola or catenary the sun traces at this or any time of year, I don't know. An arc traverses one side to the next. At altitude, a plane turns a circle equal roughly to the earth. Running geometric below, nothing is precise. The plane does not go out, is bound with us to the earth. So you can kind of see how these, I don't know, I sort of envision them as sort of instructive somehow, and some of them are, I'm doing a poorer job instructing him than others. At one point I wrote a little thing for him where I told him I wanted simple things for him. This is February 5th. I wrote elsewhere that I wanted simple things for you, a world beheld, descried, and one-night stands, yes, and petty fistfights. You, home streaked with blood, washed only in streams of tears. A night, your first of drunkenness, wandering alone among ivies, mumbling to yourself. Such a tiny heart thuds in your theoretical chest. Now a constant whish, a motor I want for you in bloodthirst to shoot a robin. And for that bird, in its death grip, to turn inverted, still clinging to the branch dead, swinging, to mirror your savagery and furtive love. Such molding horror, such humanity. Kind of want him to read that, but okay. And this is February 26th. Oh, no, never mind. That's not February 26th. I'm going to go to the, like 3 days before we knew that we were going to have this kiddo, I had a dream. And this is March 9th. He was born on March 13th, 2 months premature. He was 3 pounds, 13 ounces. And so we spent a lot of time in the hospital, and you're going to hear about that in a second. But this is the dream I had 3 days before he was born. You were newly born. A bit fussy, your mother pulled you to her breast and led us up a mountain. I wanted to turn back as the wind twisted the tree branches in my mouth. She pushed us onward, rightly countering my cowardice. That was the last thing I wrote before we wound up in the hospital. And it was a crazy time. It was really crazy. Doctors, a half a dozen of them, hands all over the place, and it was just like crazy. But I wrote this while she was kind of, Camille was starting labor, and I mean, we weren't really starting. I wouldn't be off writing a poem while we were starting. The night before, you remember, this is in the middle of the night, probably 3 o'clock in the morning. I wrote this. The contractions had started to happen, and the little readout on the monitor was starting to spike and do all this stuff. And so, of course, this is for him. As the mountains of your tantrums cross the readout, slow as from an airplane, you kick savagely. You are little more. Too early. Your mother grips you in sleep, mumbling again or gang. They rush toward you, blue baby. So he's born full moon, Friday the 13th, March 13th, 3 pounds, 13 ounces. It's all crazy. And I was just taking notes of all this. It was pretty interesting, but not worth reading. But this is, I think, worth reading. The 15th, so 2 days, he's 2 days old. What the darkness Mrs. Lars ill-prepared for air and light, while the bubbles in your feeding tube rise and fall as your inefficient chest. Eyes useless and blue as the Pacific swells and retracts. But you brought spring along. March 18th, the rain taps insistent on the roof. On memory, we counted the snowflakes as we did your uterine hiccups. Now you hiccup in a thing called an isolate. And I'm familiar now with other terms: sterile field, bilirubin lamp, desaturation alarm. As in a dream, you walked out of a stand of trees naked and turned back. March 26th. I hardly know what to say, son. Say, come home. Say, I want you to breathe. Easier to want, easier to have touched the face of God and found it artifice, falsity, not of substance as your fists grapple and release nothing, but to know finally the real power of such belief, of such desire to believe. And find it doubly impossible, Lars. That's a tough one to read. He came home on April 17th, and this is April 20th, a night that I remember very well, because I was holding him, and we were out in the backyard. It was warm enough, and we had these party lights hung that form this kind of, I don't know what you'd call it. I just read a poem about it. I don't know what that's called. It's, I don't know, some kind of sag. What is it? Swag. A swag. That's a beautiful word. And those against his eyes, which are brand new. You know, these infants are like brand new eyes, and everything shines so bright against them. And so it's forming this kind of double curve. And it also happened to be the occultation of Venus behind the moon. And so an occultation is where a planet goes behind the shadow of the, or not the shadow, but behind the moon to our eyes. And so it kind of dips behind the moon and comes back. So that, I think, is where I was kind of coming up with all this stuff. So this is April 20th. Your eyes reflect into a stippled crescent, the party lights strung on double curve against your convex eye. You look behind them to the waning crescent moon, Venus somewhere crossing behind. On April 23rd, Coriolis, which is the effect of the Earth turning. It's what kind of turns strangely, like mobiles and stuff sort of turn without any air. It's just the Earth turning, and it turns us with it, basically. And it also is what, like water going down the drain in the northern hemisphere goes down clockwise, and in the southern hemisphere goes down counterclockwise. So that's Coriolis. Is it the other way around?
Is that true?
Yeah, it is true. It's a fact. It's a fact. Does anybody concur? Anybody know what I'm talking about?
True.
Yes, your dad.
Don't listen to him.
So, April 23rd, Coriolis. You wake while I write this poem for you, Lars, and inquire of the birds wheeling above your head, twisting soft with the ceiling fan. Wait, son. The bells that call the Episcopalian faithful to service and sounded long enough to buoy you out of sleep fade and leave you with your birds in hands. April 25th. It's, I believe, Latin. You'll have to correct me. Adamo me fecit means Adam made me, and it was inscribed onto some pillar in some building in Italy. I don't know exactly the story, but I just love this notion of Adam made us, or, as far as a kind of Judeo-Christian history is concerned. And it's very related to the one before it. Turning above the mystery of the ceiling, the leaves fanning the corner of the room in shadow, things unnamed seem truly the first time. And that just astounded me that he was seeing all these things for the first time, like he was experiencing shadows for the first time, and all this stuff was just astounding me. So let's move through here, huh? Shall we? Should we move through here? The last one is when, on his due date, the last one I wrote for him officially, and that was May 5th, and it's just called Due Today. Young pup, sun, alive, fuzzed shoulders and rib cage expand, contract, asleep, draw a deep breath, all animals' abundance. That's kind of where it ended, and it ended organically, I guess, and on a kind of a cutoff, or else I would have just kept writing them forever and ever and ever. And I have, and this is one for Camille and for Lars, in which Camille is compared to Jesus. That's very serious, I don't know. You, having breathed and been breathed out, hatchling quick swallows over the black earth. The words cast labor, creti, from which spring the hyacinths. Christ mother, pelican wings spread, the nourishing blood shed for her own youth. That's just a mom poem, I guess. It's for all you mothers out there that tapped your own veins for these children. So enough of those happy, sappy poems. Let's read some death poems. Are you gonna read the elegy? This is inspired from Michael, and so I won't be afraid of stealing his thunder and say it's an elegy for Anna Nicole Smith. And he wrote this really wonderful thing. I'm kind of bawling not reading it. But all I could think about was Pink. When I heard that she died, she was so pink, and it was pink and pink. So you're gonna hear Pink a half a dozen times in this short poem. It's called Elegy. If at the beginning of spring she should smile, A spray of paper whites will bloom sprayed pink. Among caribou herds, thousands of calves, each born in pink. Boreal lights scattered all pretty colors, her lips balmed pink as amnion. Cracked, pulled taut, will bear among other things frigid ice floes, reflecting a body embalmed pink as a blush and as a life lived hopefully naked. Couple of real ones that just, this one just came out in Mudfish and they just flubbed it. It's driving me bonkers. There's just like 4 typos in this poem. It's just like, what has happened to us that we can't like correct spelling? It's like, my name on the title page is Tim Erickson with an L on the end. It's like, come on. It took them like 3 years to publish this thing and they couldn't. But beyond that, I mean, it's, I shouldn't even read it because it's an elegy for a very dear man to me, Brian Peterson, who is my wife's mother's brother, and who is just like another father to me, and he died of cancer. It's just so nasty, that disease. I hate it, but you'll see what this poem has to say about it. It's called Verdure, which is sort of greenery. Brian, you don't know him, had a melanoma sliced clean out of his head, an incision that went down to the white of his skull. A year of aptly named interferon turned him pasty and weak, but nipped it in the bud. Come springtime, a new bud, 7.5 millimeters, sprouted in his liver, killed him. And I'm tempted at this time of year to think of weeds, invasive and rugged and virulent and ugly, and Holderlin, for the pondering God hates untimely growth. But how beautiful a dandelion is, and if not beautiful, how wondrous a piece of technology. I wasn't kidding, death poems. This is for my grandmother who died this year. There's a little bit of stuff from Maurice Ravel in here. I don't even know what the word is. Any musicians in here, people who read music? The notations that the composer puts up top above the bars that says how you should play it. Anybody know what that's called? Come on, Brett.
Expressive markings.
Expressive markings, that's exactly right, yes. There's a little bit in here in French, so you'll forgive my pronunciation. It says douce mais comme un appel, which means sweet but like a bell, but like a bell gong. So that's from Ravel. And the last lines are Ravel's advice to pianists on how to play his music. It's really just, I don't know, something came together here. It also was based on a photograph of a church that looked like the keel of a boat turned upside down. So that may come up. So it's called Heart Monitor Valse for Delilah Mayhew. The contour of the melody, Lutheran keel, upturned womb, rubato, all good, all good. Worship overturned spinnaker, full volume of air, a church by God, into whose far corner light embarked a flame, a little exaggerated. Douze mais comme un appel, the signal noise creates the wave, collapses, rises, collapses, and breathe through the pedal, resonant. Dear, breathe through the pedal, let the final chord sparkle. I don't want to go too long through this without getting to the new stuff. These are all poems that are like 3 or 4 years old. Let's see. I wanted to read some of these Arab Spring poems that sprung into my brain, and I'm going to kind of move into that in just one moment. first. This poem called Gaussian, which the editors of Chicago Review were so wise to print. Lee the lake, the bright sun caught and scattered in cloud. A dark arrowhead advancing, winter storm watch, winter coming in, synthetic slush. With luck it will, but an arrowhead advances across the valley, miss us north. Hard ghosts leaving tire treads no sound. In the snow an oak split at the trunk fork, wet fiber exposed, the sun through the cloud bank delights it. This is kind of where the poems are starting to just really mash together. I like to think about it like cold welding, where you put two pieces of metal and you just hammer them until they finally fuse together. There's no fire or anything, you just like keep hammering. And I think that's the way these poems are coming together. So they're getting a little more difficult to kind of parse out, I think, as we're getting toward now. And I'm comfortable with that, as long as people who hear them are just willing to let them kind of sink in, and if it doesn't affect you, then let her go. And if it does, then there are places, I think, where you can grab hold, and I hope you do. This next one is called Mach, and it's about the physicist Mach, who we know it from Mach 1, Mach 2, he Mach 3. He proposed that the reason why our universe is not flying apart is because every single thing pulls on everything else. And so the smallest speck of dust pulls on everything else, and we pull on each other, and the chairs pull toward us, and so that is something that just completely stunned me, that notion. So I think the poem, I'm not sure what it's trying to say. I'm still trying to figure out what it's trying to tell me, but I think the first word, vanitas, vanity, versus the fact that we're all kind of pulling together, I think is kind of where it's going. I'm not totally sure. But it's called Mach. Vanitas, nothing, but together the physical fact, the breath is the immortal, cold yellow wreath of smog circles the valley floor, therefore the act. Midwinter in the fluorescent yellow hornet traps still hung, attractant quarter full, vanitas a wretch, a yellow hornet curled among other curled hornets, among other things held fast by the farthest quasar, moon, black fly, all pulling together. Pièce froide, as they say in French. This means cold piece. Cold pieces. Driving on 7th East, just right by the park, Liberty Park, there was a goose. This was right after a storm that came through and then got really cold, and this goose was laying in the bike lane with its wings frozen to the ground and its belly up. It was just absolutely stunning. So I gave it a whirl. To set them, the words in proper light. The wing-splayed goose frozen on its back, blood to the road, frozen viscera, credo. When the herb blossoms, the herb is embittered. Bright down blossoming as the car pass, lit from great height. I had this I imagined this, the poor goose, just great height. So to move, I've totally lost track of time. So what do we got? 10 minutes? 5 minutes? 2 minutes? 5? Okay, 5 minutes. That gives me time to read 2 or 3 more poems. They're getting longer and they're getting a little more densely compacted. So, but they are getting a little more topical, perhaps. This is called Toward Egypt, and written was watching some, newscast, and they had these closed-circuit camera videos of the protesters in Tahrir Square rushing into the square after they got kicked out, and it's all grainy, and I just saw this, it looked like liquid, so this is where it comes from. Toward Egypt. Two swords. The lip of the liquid advances, ringed in light. T-shirts. Viscous is it dust of the onrush? The flowers, poppies, blood spatter, spread slow, ringed in light. Is it dust separates the solids or smoke? Destroy us, you armies of Egypt. Destroy us. Reduce all our cities to ashes and dust. Canones leges. O canon sacerdotium regnum, the sword, the sacred sword will serve you. Soon all the priests will gather, striking the will and the dark compass, the range of one's arms. Two more, quick. This is called Dichotomous Key, Libya. And it's got a bunch of genus names for mushrooms. In fact, it was in this very library about 25 feet away that I found this book about mushrooms. Just somebody had it on the desk, and I grabbed it and started thinking about freedom as spores that come off of mushrooms and spread around, and there are attendant problems and advantages to that fact, and so that's where this poem came from. Dichotomous Key, Libya. Phrase dichotomous key I owe to Justin Roth, who was studying in a biology class, and it's a very interesting term. Look it up sometime. Witch caps and a cloud wisp, white wings tumble wheel in the wind in the empty square. Banners mistaken heaven, Virosa. The mountains splay outward and into the valley. No home belongs on a mountaintop. Wings of the wooded hollows, liberty, spores fly, agaric, the destroying angel. And fly agaric and destroying angel are both mushroom types. It's pretty crazy. So let's finish up here, shall we, everybody? I don't want to end on that, but it's sort of. This is called Taros, and Taros is a wing. It's Greek for wing, taro. Palm fan, scallop winglets of the sea-born missile, flap open at launch, and Yadamine, born of the fractal foam. How to hold a wing trimmed toward the inexpressible contour, guided anisometric glide path, interfaces at urinum. Tar and black soil, what's to become of it? The people, a molar entity, sovereign in its rubbled courtyards.